course, we know by now. We've just been talking about it. It's St George's Day, and there was an event planned in central London. Very quick off the mark. The Metropolitan Police came out and said an event to mark St George's Day is expected to take place on Richmond Terrace off Whitehall, which is near Downing Street, basically, for anyone that's not familiar with London. Anyway, the police said, we believe those planning to attend include far-right groups and groups linked to football clubs travelling from elsewhere in the UK. Well, you can imagine everyone was desperate for it all to kick off. You can just imagine how many people would have been lined up there, absolutely desperate for something to go horribly wrong. I've got to say, look, I'm showing you a bit of footage now. So this is from the area where they were allowed to stand, everybody, in this free country, a designated area where they were allowed to stand. Anyway, it didn't take too much time before the next set of images started coming through. This one was actually tweeted out by the Metropolitan Police. What you can see there, if you ask me anyway, is the police, they're kettling in people that are attending this event because, heaven forbid, they had the audacity to step out of the pink shaded area where they'd been allowed to stand. You can see there the police horses, in they come, charging in. I've got another perspective on this one as well. You can see now, this is filmed directly from the other side of that police cordon there, really. And I look at that and I think, is there any need? Is there really any need? Was there any need to kettle these people? Was there really any need to go charging in with that horse? I've got a strap, a text box running, so you can't actually see the bottom of that screen. But there was just three fellas standing there against the wall when that police horse kind of charged in like that. Apparently, someone else walloped one of those horses with an umbrella, and if that is indeed true, then of course I don't condone that. But anyway, as the event kind of carried on, I saw lots of TSG units piling in, police with their helmets and all the rest of it. And it feels to me like there is a two-tiered approach, Quentin, when it comes to protesting in this country, because I don't see every week that kind of police approach.
No, you don't, and I think that's a fair point. However, I would also just add a little note of caution about this event. First I heard about this event today was the helicopters flying over Westminster, and suddenly thought, well, there's something going on here. But this was, it seems to have had some sort of political flavour to it, because it had speeches were going to be organised, I think, by Lawrence Fox and Tommy Robinson, who's not a particularly hygienic fellow. And therefore, it certainly wasn't, this was not, it could not have been mistaken for a Church of England fete.
Well, hang on, by the way, because I do want to, in case anyone's not familiar, you say about Tommy Robinson, whatever you just described him as, he had the final day of a court case today when the Met Police were found to have acted in a way against him that was actually unlawful. He essentially had his case chucked out of court. Apparently, he shouldn't have been arrested in the way that he was. He shouldn't have had bail conditions attached to him the way that he should have.
Be that as it may, I'm just not sort of sure that he's an entirely neutral figure. Anyway...
What's that got to do with the price of fish if someone's not neutral?
Well, what I'm saying is I think this was undoubtedly a political event, and that the police would have had their eye on that as a result. This was not a civic family gathering.
But what's not? OK, you can say that these pro-Palestine marches...
Yeah, which the police also...
some form of political statement by many.
The police
I don't see police horses charging people. I don't see people...
Well, the police certainly turn up at those events. And,
what, in that manner, Quentin?
I am reluctant to attack the police without strong evidence otherwise.
So you think that it's all nothing to see here, the way that they police that event today is exactly the way they police everything else? Not
saying that, not at all, and I don't like seeing police horses charging into crowds. However, I am not yet convinced that the police are bang to rights on this.
Hello?
I think there's two things happening here. On the one hand, these kind of St George's Day events, gatherings, protests, whatever you want to call them, historically do quite often descend into shoving around police horses, crushing police, all the rest of it, that kind of behaviour that, is probably most of us wouldn't engage in. There's images of it now on the screen of, a bit of disorder, a bit of drinking, all the rest of it. So, I mean, on the one hand, that happens. I suppose the police have to respond to it. And I think Quentin was fairly light on Tommy Robinson. He's very litigious, so I'm not going to go into it, but certainly I wouldn't want to go drinking with him. I don't think he's a nice bloke. I don't think his views are very nice. And
but
so
you don't
there's
have
that.
to. Nobody has to like everyone in society.
Not at all, but that's me politically judging what's going on there. I also think it's kind of interesting that the St. George's Day thing has turned into this kind of culture war, and maybe we could get into that. But the second point, which is almost kind of like you say, so what if that's your view of those people? The second point is that the police are treating this differently. So, you know, for example, they've got to put in a Section 60 order to allow them to increase stop and searches, insist on people removing their masks. And, you know, that kind of quick, hard and heavy action has been absent from some of the Saturday pro-Palestine marches, for example, where you see a tenor within the police or a sort of approach of much more kind of, well, the jihad thing, it's debatable. Well, you know, we kind of do a hands-off thing. Or even worse, you've seen, as has been documented over the last week, police officers escorting people out of the way because they're openly Jewish. So, you know, the police pick and choose where they want to politically intervene, and obviously tweeting that the group is far right and even worse than far right, perhaps football supporters. Yeah. That was the worst bit of that tweet.
It was a stupid tweet.
Is a political intervention which is at best unnecessary and at worst biased. So there's 2 points here. You don't have to like the whole kind of, I think, pantomime nature of the St. George's Day thing, which, you know, has a political edge to it that I personally don't agree with. But the point about different styles of policing, I think, stands. The Met can do what it wants and come in hard and heavy with the riot gear and the horses and the charging when it wants to, and when it doesn't want to, it doesn't. So the disparity between what happens on the Saturdays and what happens now is probably clear for all to see. I would like police to not ever charge people with horses and stuff like that unless it's absolutely necessary because of the threat of physical violence. So I'm not suggesting the police repeat what they've done to the Robinson fans and the rest of them this coming Saturday.
I just don't know why you have to have I don't know why this protest had to be outside Downing Street. What's that got to do with St. George? St. George's Day has nothing to do with politics, really.
No, but this is what I mean about the sort of culture war thing. It's been interesting watching social media today. I've seen far more, how dare you say that about St. George posts than I have outrageous posts about St. George. There's a kind of...
maybe the nature of social media.
Well, there's a bit of a sort of... I think there's a bit of a kind of... I suppose it speaks to sort of the question of, well, what does it mean to be, English? What does it mean to be, fan of St. George? What are we? What are the values that we aspire to be, which we often talk about on this show? And I think on days like St. George's Day, people, rightly or wrongly, resort to the flags, the fish and chip, isn't it lovely to be English thing, which is fine, but as a political kind of understanding of what it really means to live in this country is unsatisfactory.
But I don't understand your point about when you're saying about why do they want to be down Whitehall. Well, why not?
What's it got to do? What's that got to do with St. George? St. George to me is about Shakespeare. It's about the broad, forgiving culture that we have.
Right.
And it's to do with the beautiful countryside we have and our sense of humour, and it's to do with our grub. It's got nothing to do with having a protest outside Downing Street.
That's your interpretation of it. And a lot of these people, by the way...
Oh, no, of course. I mean, it's a free country. They're allowed to do... Generally, we're allowed to do what we want. But at the same time, part of me recoils from our patron saints. Not that I feel very strongly about the patron saint, because I'm a Protestant. But the idea of my national identity somehow being politicised by Tommy Robinson. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, but I just find this such a peculiar nature because, such a peculiar point that why are you down Whitehall? Because what's St. George got to do with Whitehall or whatever?
Yeah, but this was undoubtedly a political, politicised gathering.
Marches go past Whitehall all the time. This march, it wasn't even allowed... I'm reluctant to even call it a march. I think it was just an event, a gathering, a central destination that happened to be that central point in London. And they were told you've got to be stationary, you've got to stand still, and then the police are tweeting out, you've got an hour to go before the commencement of the event, and look what they're doing, they're pushing past police lines. But why are you kettling people?
It's interesting, if you... Just before the show came on, Ellie Costello interviewed some people in Dartford, and I was listening to one of the interviews interviews with a couple in a pub, and when she said, why do you want to come out and celebrate on St George's Day? And he had a very defensive position, the man interviewed, where he said, it feels like you're not allowed to be patriotic. It feels like you're not allowed to fly the flag and support St George's Day. And so that's why I think it's important to come out and do it. And I think that defensiveness is because, we have had culturally and politically a very snobby attitude to, as much as I'm not a fan of it, the St George's flag, let's go back to Emily Thornberry doing the whole kind of tweet about, was it Rochdale? There's a real sneery attitude to the kind of, a lot of the time, working class expressions of patriotism. And so that defensiveness might be justified in some senses, but it's not political, it's not politically substantial to go down the kind of bang the drum patriotic route. It's a bit of fun, and I think we should take it lightly, but the idea that it would get turned into this big protest movement, which I think it was outside of Whitehall, it was quite far in political. There's no problem with that.
But that's because the police wouldn't let them go on Whitehall. So they had this shaded area where they had to stand stationary on and around Richmond Terrace or whatever it's called. And then those people wanted to, whatever they wanted to do, wander around, have the audacity to walk down a street. From what I saw, the police then cut that line off. So you had some people there, some people here, and the police going, well, you're not going through?
Yeah.
Well, so if people go, well, actually, my mate's there, or I want to go that way, that's not massively unreasonable.
No.
I saw old people knocked down to the ground. I saw police horses, bashing up against people that were stood absolutely stationary. And I can't help but wonder, and this is just me wondering out loud, if that group of people were standing there waving pride flags, or if that group of people were standing there waving Palestinian flags, would they get that reaction from the Metropolitan Police? I don't think that they would.
Well, no, there's probably the best comparison is, go back to the sort of interventions made by Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion, where there was people in papier-mâché lying all along the routes around Westminster, and the police were very unwilling to take out or remove people who were literally causing public disturbance and blocking roads and things like that. That, in comparison to, which essentially is the kettling of people this afternoon, whatever I think about those people down in Whitehall, the kettling of them, I think is pretty outrageous. And Quentin, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I think that there is a disparity there. And I think you don't have to
I agree. I think there is two-tier policing.
Well, there you go. What do you make to it at home? As always, you can have the final word. I just think, both of my guests have mentioned Tommy Robinson. Anyone that's followed that court case today, it was, I would say, quite humiliating for the police, actually.